Hello there, my name is Tico Tepser-Ton. I'm a recent graduate of the Lambda School. Um, I'm here today to practice my whiteboarding skills and my ability to communicate and convey technical concepts and ideas to a would-be interviewer, which is you. So today we're going to be going over a problem that I came across while going through the Front-End Masters program. Actually, it was Bianca Gandolfo's program on the Front-End Masters curriculum, and it is called A Practical Guide to Algorithms with JavaScript. And yeah, so let's start. So our problem today is we need to determine if a given array of integers, ARR, contains no duplicate integers. And so the expected input for this particular problem is going to be an array of integers. Integers meaning like whole numbers, so no fractions or floating numbers or anything like that. So there's an example here, 1, 2, and 3. So 3 items in that array, all whole numbers, all integers. Our expected output, we can return 2 outputs, 2 kinds. So we can either return true or false. If no duplicates exist, meaning all of the items in the array are unique, then we're going to return true. And then if duplicates do exist, we're going to return false. So an example of a duplicate of an array with duplicates would be 1, 1, and 3. That would return false. Constraints. In this particular problem, Bianca did not mention any specific constraints. I would probably ask something like, can these integers be negative, or do they have to be non-negative, I guess? That's about it. There were no like upper or lower limits for items or numbers that could be inside of the array. So yeah, so I'm just going to put here for constraints. We'll say, other than the fact that they need to be whole numbers, no fractions. Okay, so let's get started. Today I'm going to be using JavaScript to solve this problem, and this is going to be the brute force problem, brute force solution to the problem. I want to start with the brute force solution so that we can see how we can make the algorithm faster according to Bianca Gandolfo's breadcrumbs method, which is awesome. So we're going to be looking at that in the next video. Okay, so first we are going to start with defining the function. Let's call the function is unique. And that's referring to whether or not the array that's being given to the function contains unique numbers. And so this function unique is going to take in an array, like we talked about. We have a fat arrow function here. There's my open curlies. We're going to come all the way down here, and we're going to close those curlies. And the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to set, we're going to want to create a variable that will be returned even after a bunch of logic has executed, right? And that variable will basically return true or false. So let's create a variable called, let's call it unique nums in array. So that's more semantic. But unique, I'm going to use camel casing, nums in array, and we'll set it equal to true as the default value for that. Okay? And now that we have that, basically we're going to create some logic in here that's basically going to go through and compare each item in the array to the other items in the array. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use nested for loops, which is going to be slow but this is the brute force solution. So in the next video, we'll demonstrate how to make that faster. So first, we want to create a for loop for let I equal 0, so we're started at 0, where I is less than array dot length, and I will continue to increase by 1. Just like that. And we're going to come down here and close this for loop. Here. And now inside this for loop, to help make things a little more easy as you're testing it, it might be a good idea to add a console.log statement there, which will help you know which loop you're in, because you're going to have an outer for loop, and they're also going to have an inner for loop. And so console.logging that may help you with debugging. So let's just, for this purpose, we'll add that in here. So we'll say console.log, and here's we'll just add some backticks, right? Because we want to interpolate the value of I to tell which iteration you're in, and also which loop you're in. So we'll just maybe make some tildes in here, 3 of those tildes. Let's say outer, and then we'll add 3 more tildes, and then we'll put I strict equals, and then here's where we're going to interpolate that variable I. So we're going to put a money sign here with the curlies, add I in there, and we'll add the backtick, close the parentheses, and then add our semicolon, like that. So now anytime it iterates through this outer loop, it's going to print the value of I using interpolation. And now we want to go deeper. Now we want to go into the inner for loop. So we'll add another for loop here. For, we have to use a different variable this time, though, since we're going to be iterating through the same items in the array, but we want to compare them to different items in the array. So we're going to use, let's use j as our variable now. So where j is less than array.length, and j is also going to increase by 1 each time. And we'll open up some curlies. We'll come down here, close that for loop. All right, and then also, let's do the same thing. Let's also add a console.log statement to this inner for loop to also help with debugging and also help you understand where you're at in that process. So console.log, add the backtick in there. Maybe we'll only put 1 of these tildes so that when it prints, it looks better. Inner, another tilde, and we'll add the variable j there, and add the strict equals operator here, and then I'm going to interpolate j again, just like that. Backtick to close it off, close the parentheses, semicolon. Okay, so now we're going to know exactly where we're at, whether we're in the outer loop or the inner loop, and then also what the value of I and j are as we're going through them. Okay? And now we need to add the logic to basically determine whether or not the numbers in this array are in fact duplicates or not duplicates. Okay? So first we're going to add an if statement here. If I is not equal to j, and here's my double ampersand there, and the value of array at the index of I is equal to, we want to use a strict equals operator here, the value, or the array, the value of the array at the index of j. Then we'll do the following. Right? And this is where we'll need to readjust here. So we still want to close that, and let me make this a little bit nicer here. There we go. Okay. So what we want to do next is, if we ever run into a situation where I is not equal to j, meaning you're not comparing like the exact same numbers, right? You'll be comparing numbers where I and j are different. So, for instance, if we have the array right here, we have 1, 2, 3. This would be I equals 0. And this one here, if it's iterated through, and this is j equals 1, then that would satisfy this case here. Otherwise, like if you're in a situation where it's comparing like I as this index here, and then also j is that index there, then you're not really comparing anything different. You're comparing the same number to itself. So we don't want to do that, right? We want to satisfy a situation where I is not equal to j. Just like if j is pointing to 2, I is pointing to 1. The double ampersands meaning that both conditions need to be fulfilled in order for the code block to run. So array at the index of I, so if we're in the 0th iteration, then the value here would be 1. And then if at the array at the index of j, if that's 2, then 1 is equal to 2. That doesn't fulfill it, so it'll just skip whatever is inside this code block, which we're going to put in here. We're going to change this value here, unique nums in array, to false if both these conditions are ever satisfied. So we'll just say unique nums, it's a really long variable name, sorry, in array equals false. Okay? So that's how that's going to check whether or not the numbers, while they're being compared to each other, are going to be duplicates or not. And lastly, down here, after the entire for loop runs, we're going to want to make sure that we, by default, we return that variable that we've created at the beginning here. So we'll return unique nums in array. Okay? And then lastly, at the bottom here, after the entire function, we're just going to console.log, and we're going to invoke the function. So is unique, and then we're going to pass in the array, which we can pass in just like the array itself, 1, 2, 3, like that. And that will invoke the function and also print out whatever is returned. So in this situation, 1, 2, 3, if that's the variable, if that's the array that's being passed in to the isUnique function, using this logic here, this brute force method, which is rather slow, but it is the brute force method, it's actually going to return true. Should return true, right? And if we're talking about runtime complexity of this algorithm here, we're going to say that the runtime complexity is big O of n squared, also known as quadratic, which is not the best, right? In the next video, we're going to talk about the breadcrumbs method that Bianca goes over in her front-end master's course that will allow you to make this algorithm faster using hashing, or actually no, caching. Using caching, the ability to store items in an object or an array, and then be able to use lookup, which has an O of 1 runtime, a constant runtime, and then you'd only have to have one for loop versus two nested for loops in your algorithm there, which would then bring it down to O of n runtime, which is faster and better. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. I obviously am learning how to convey technical concepts via whiteboard problems to an interviewer. So thank you for spending the time with me.